One of those topics we always get on every year come training camp beginning and getting into the preseason is what guys are holding out, what guys want new contracts, what guys are going to get new contracts, what guys aren't going to show up to camp, what should teams do? And I think the Dallas Cowboys are in a situation where we're thinking about them just like this in relation to Dak Prescott and whether or not they should go ahead and pay him. And the reality to me is there's not an easy answer for this. I think you can come up with as many reasons to not pay Dak Prescott big time money as you could for the positive. Like if I'm looking at Dak, let's just keep it real here. Do you really want to pay elite money for a guy who's maybe an above average NFL starting quarterback? And I realize that's kind of the marketplace that we're in now, that above average quarterbacks getting paid elite money. But just because others are doing it doesn't mean that you automatically want to do it, does it? I don't think so. He doesn't have any 4,000-yard passing seasons. He doesn't have any seasons where he's thrown for 25 touchdown passes or more. And those aren't even like elite statistical measurements at this point. Those are just above average, and he hasn't even really gotten to those. And we know with the Cowboys that Ezekiel Elliott is truly what makes that offense go. He is the straw that stirs that drink. Sure, along with the foundation of that great offensive line. But Zeke is the dude. You feel more confident that the Cowboys could win some games without Dak if they had Zeke than if they had Dak and not Zeke. And we saw that back in 2017 when Zeke missed the 6 games. That team just wasn't the same, and Dak didn't really step up and take his play to another level. And also when I'm thinking about it as Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones and who you want to pay big money to, while granted you still technically have Zeke on his rookie deal for another 2 seasons once you pick up the 5th-year option, it's cheaper to pay Zeke elite money at his position, a lot cheaper than it is to pay Dak Prescott elite money at his, and easier in my opinion to reconcile it because of the fact that Ezekiel Elliott is actually elite as his position, where Dak Prescott is not. It's not a knock on Dak, it's just the reality, and I think everybody, I would hope, understands that. And then when you look at Dak too, how much better do you really think he's going to get? It's one thing if you sat there and said he's above average now, but we think he could be a for sure franchise guy and maybe get into the elite territory. But in 3 years, how much real progression have you seen? That doesn't make Dak Prescott a bad quarterback or a mediocre quarterback at all. It's just how much better is he really truly going to get? Have you really seen that much variance and that much difference and improvement in his play over the first 3 years of his career? Maybe a little, but not that much, and the numbers kind of bear that out. And also factoring in mind, too, if you're the Cowboys, for a team that for years kept putting themselves into a really bad place in terms of the salary cap, do you want to get back into a situation where you are overpaying guys way above where their performance actually dictates they should be paid? Especially when you've got other guys that you're going to have to pay here soon too. Ezekiel Elliott being one. Amari Cooper, who you gave up a first-round pick for in trade with the Raiders. You're going to want to validate giving up that first-round pick. You're going to have to sign him long-term. Jalen Smith's on the final year of his rookie contract, so you're going to want to have to pay him. And there's only so much money to go around. And I'm not saying that paying Dak means that you can't pay all 3 of those guys. You potentially could. It's just what else would be out there and how much quicker you would get into trouble against the salary cap. And as far as Dak Prescott goes, to me, the Cowboys have some control here because they could franchise tag him for 2020 and potentially even 2021 and come out with it with a lower annual value than if they had to give him a long-term deal. I think the franchise number for quarterbacks last year was about $24.5 million-ish. So it goes up a little bit. Still cheaper than potentially you having to pay $30 to $35 million a year for Dak. You have the ability to give him big money, but still give him less than you would have to, and all the while still giving an opportunity on another kind of 1-year prove-it deal, and you could potentially do that twice. You could make an argument that with that luxury of having the franchise tag that you could use, why would you want to sit there and force yourself into locking up into Dak Prescott long term for huge money that could cause you some salary cap challenges down the road if you don't have to. And frankly, that is going to be a thing that not just the Cowboys, but a lot of teams are going to have to reconcile over the next couple of years as they're looking at this. The Bucks and Titans are going to get ready to have to make that decision on Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota. The Rams are going to have to sit there and make that decision soon on Jared Goff. In a couple of years, my Bears are going to have to make that decision on Mitchell Trubisky. Is it really worth paying average or above average guys elite money with the consequences that can have with the salary cap? Is it worth it? And the Cowboys now kind of have to answer that question. But you can also look at Dak and you can say, yeah, he might not be great, but he is really consistent. He's played every game in 3 years, which when you talk about a starting quarterback, the number one key ability in a lot of cases is availability. And Dak has played and started every single game. He's won 2/3 of his starts, a 32-16 record. So while you might look back at Tony Romo's career and you see all the great numbers that he put up, the fact is that this team wins a lot more games more consistently with Dak Prescott as their starting quarterback. Which would you rather have, great stats or more wins? I think we all know what the answer is. A 67-25 touchdown to interception ratio. Look, Dak Prescott is not a world beater, and he is not, to me, quite on the same level as Russell Wilson. But you could do a lot worse than him. He is consistent. He's available. A decent dude, it feels like, on the field in terms of leadership in the locker room and so forth. And again, as part of thinking about the quarterback position, there is no guarantee that if you let Dak Prescott walk or you trade him away, somebody signs him in free agency, that you're going to be able to find better in free agency or the draft. This is part of the reason why teams overpay for quarterbacks, that don't deserve elite money, is because they know there is no guarantee that they're going to find better on the marketplace. And if you don't, my God, that is going to send that organization into a tailspin very quickly and going to lead to a lot of questioning and second guessing. And when you look at Dak, to be fair, he's only going to be 26 this year. He still has room to improve and get better. Like I said, I don't know just how much truly his upside is, but he can still improve. He can still get better. He has only been a quarterback in the league for 3 years. So he should, in theory, have a lot of years left in his career. And you could argue, in my estimation, that by signing Dak Prescott to a long-term deal and getting it done and out of the way, offers some protection for the investment that you've made in the offensive line with Tyron Smith and Travis Frederick and Zach Martin. It protects the investment that you have in Ezekiel Elliott, the investment that you've put into Amari Cooper. If you sit there and go potentially with a lesser quarterback, then it diminishes the return that you get from all these other big contracts that you have out there. And that is a valid thing to consider. And also, too, when you look ahead long term in a couple of years when the next CBA process comes up and how ugly that is destined to be, who knows what the salary cap is going to look like? Who knows what contracts are going to look like? There's a lot of risk there. Meaning that it may be better to bite the bullet now and slightly to moderately overpay certain guys that you really want to keep, because in a couple of years, let's say all of a sudden the marketplace changes to where the average value of a quarterback in their contract is $40+ million a year. I'd rather be sitting there on a Dak Prescott, an above average quarterback, paying him $32 to $33 million a year. That's kind of the way that I would look at it. That unknown is very scary. And when you think about it, I use the MBA as a perfect comparison. There were several years back, I come on here and I'm talking about guys getting $60 million over 5 years and so forth, and talk about how stupid that was and how ridiculous that was. Well, some of them were, and some of them weren't, because eventually the salary cap grew by leaps and bounds with a new television deal. So all of a sudden, $12 million out of $95 to $100 million isn't as bad as $12 million out of $60 million. So the point I'm getting at here, the players are, I would assume, going to dig in big time, trying to get a larger share of the overall revenue, which could very well increase the salary cap by quite a bit, which is going to elevate player contract values across the board, most notably at the most important position in the game, which is the quarterback position. 'Tis maybe better to pay Dak $30 million a year now than in a couple of years having to pay him $35 to $40 million. It's a thought. So when I look at this, it's really hard for me to reconcile it. because on the one hand, there are definitely benefits to getting it done now in ways that you could definitely argue that it makes sense. But there's still that kind of lingering thought of Dak is not an elite guy, and I don't want to pay non-elite guys elite money. It just generally does not work out well. And that is true. See Joe Flacco and see many others too, frankly. Look at what the Lions pay Matthew Stafford. And you look this past season at, what was it, the 6 highest paid quarterbacks in the league, and none of them made the playoffs? There's a little bit of something to that. And when you talk about the importance of having quarterbacks on a rookie scale contract, part of the benefit of having Dak the past few years as your starter was it allowed you to pay big money to Tyron Smith and Zach Martin and Travis Frederick and DeMarcus Lawrence and so forth, and put you in a position next year where if nothing changed, you'd have over $65 million in cap space. So there's definitely some value there. And like I said, there are a lot of teams over the next several years going to have to make these decisions, and the philosophy and approach to the quarterback position might change a little bit to where even if a guy has won you some games and taken you to the playoffs a couple of times is not automatically an impetus to have to keep him because you don't want to overpay him and hamstring the flexibility that you have to build and construct the rest of your roster. I think ultimately, with the Cowboys being a high-profile team, though, the fact that they've made the playoffs 2 of the 3 years that he's been there as a starter, the fact that he's still young and in theory has room to grow and improve, while not ideal, especially looking down the road in a couple of years, you might have to sit there and fork over a lot more money unless you want to get into the game of franchise tagging the guy and either A, getting a team that might want to sit there and give up some draft picks to go ahead and sign him away from you, or B, risk ill feelings and ill will between Dak and the organization and the locker room as a whole. It might just be better to go ahead and bite the bullet and get the damn deal done and figure out the rest later.